Okay, so we're back again, always, as the phrase. Um, Maybe is this lighting better, actually? Yeah, it doesn't really matter. I look paler without that one on, but um, okay, I want to talk about uh, basically the landscape of theories of everything tonight. After just kind of discussing a few, just I guess I don't know, touching base on what we were discussing yesterday, which was the identification of these two patterns. One is the information balance pattern, and then one of them is the information growth pattern. And we were applying it to human relationships, and we were applying it to colors, and we were applying it to the fermions in the standard model. And we actually made an enormous amount of progress on that working session. I feel like the working sessions usually do make a lot of progress, but this was a lot. So just for those who didn't tune in, this was what we built yesterday on the stream. And I kind of organized it a bit more after the stream just to make it look, uh, just to take all the charts that we had made and put them into kind of just one pager. But this is what we made. And blocks of information growth on the top and the blocks of information balance on the bottom. We did it with here is human relationships, here is the fermions, here is colors, here's human relationships, the fermions, and colors. And on the left side, you can see that there is the perspectives coming from Sentient Singularity Theory's outline, and then you get whatever we're applying them to on the right. So, not saying this is perfect. There's a few things that I'm not entirely sure on. Most of it is correct. You can tell by the symmetries that are formed when you're building it, but there are some things that I could go one way or another, and it would just take more thinking on. But this is a very good base, but it does still show, and the most important thing, which is the pattern, the ever-present pattern. And this ever-present pattern that is here and here simultaneously, balancing information and growing information, is the theory of everything. And when you take a look at my website, which is sentientsingularity.com, and I highly suggest you scroll to the bottom of the homepage and sign up for my email list, because they're going to kick us off of YouTube eventually. I will not spam you, I promise. But this is my website, and just scroll to the bottom of the homepage and you can sign up for my email list there. But here it has the animated model of the cosmological verse, Sentient Singularity Theory, the theory of everyone, and it says right here, what is a theory of everything? And I go over this a lot, but it's very important because everybody always says, I don't think we really know what a theory of everything is. And they're right. But it's a theory of everything, which is really a theory of everyone, is a recognizable, predictable, and describable pattern that occurs in all instances of objective observation and an explanation for such a pattern. And that pattern, everything that we observe will fall into that pattern, but what is creating that pattern is you. And the universe, or God, whatever conscious being you're in, and your own consciousness, your mind and the mind that you are within, the overlap of those two is creating this pattern. And that pattern is the theory of everything, which is why it doesn't require super complicated math. It might require complicated math to link it to, certain other aspects of study. It will, but when you're looking at what the theory of everything really is it's going to be something it's like sub-arithmetic, or it's like sub-calculative. It's sub-mathematical. It's not mathematics, it's not physics. It gives rise to physics and mathematics. It isn't physics and mathematics, but it also gives rise to biology and chemistry and sociology and philosophy. But it gives context to all of these things and theology. So I wanted to take a look at the space of what are being and all of the quote unquote contenders, which I don't like that this has been turned into like a competition, but of course it's like it is. There's so much the ego that you have to have, and I don't mean ego as far as like you either have to believe that are you have a responsibility to do this work, or you have to have a huge ego to do this work, and that's really the only two, and they might even overlap. I don't know, but two possibilities. Because to say that you have, to throw your hat into the ring of the theories of everything is to be, it's to claim that you have the answers, even though that doesn't even, when you really understand what that means, it doesn't mean that you can solve all the problems. It means that you can lay out the context, that the mind can make sense of the problems, but that doesn't mean that we will solve them, because all the human faults still exist after that you organize everything in your experience. So nobody's saving the world with this, but it is still important. Obviously, I wouldn't do it if I didn't think it was important, but there's a lot of people involved, and one of the things that was really obnoxious about this when I first got involved is I realized that nobody was speaking to each other, and that's why I was really happy to see, Brian Keating and Kurchai Mungol create their channels where they were having on multiple different people who were basically proposing theories of everything, and they were taking ideas outside the institution seriously, which is those are the ideas that are going to be the winners. And it really started to change the game a bit, because before that you had Nassim Haramein over here and Eric Weinstein over here and Stephen Wolfram over here and Sean Carroll over here, and nobody's talking to each other, and everybody's not even just not talking to each other, they are ignoring each other actively because they are not acknowledging all the similarities purposely, because they don't want to give legitimacy to the others. But the reality is, when we look at these, they all have legitimacy. That doesn't mean that all of them occur in the same on the same hierarchy level, I guess, as far as towards objectivity or true objectivity. And but they're definitely all getting there. But it's starting to be the case that people are talking, and you had Chris Langan on Kurchai Mungol's Theories of Everything YouTube channel. Kurt was asking, what's your opinion on this person and this person and this person and this person's theory? Well, not this person, but this person's theory, this person's theory, this person's theory. And it's a really good question, actually. We should understand a little bit about each other's theory. You don't have to study them in depth. You don't have, if you're working on your own, you don't have time, but you should know the similarities and serious differences. But Chris Langan went through. He was like, that person has this theory, and this is what's wrong with it. That person has this theory, this is what's wrong with it. And it was very interesting to see, because it was the first time I had really seen anyone other than Stephen Wolfram and Eric Weinstein be asked to comment on each other's work, other than kind of Garrett Lacey and Eric, but like they do it. They're not asked to do it. They just do it. But let's take a look here at some proposed theories of everything. So we have geometric unity, emergence theory, clear one, an exceptionally simple theory of everything, Garrett Lacey, constructor theory, David Deutsch, sentient singularity theory. This paper is not done, but I will show a bit of it because If I show it, then it's here. Um, and then there's others, but these are the ones that I want to focus on. And then we're going to talk about a few other people, but so let's maybe go to people's work. CTMU. Oh man, that's not gonna work out. We'll wait on that. And honestly, we'll close that because it's probably giving us some problems. But there is a lot of theories here, and this one is Geometric Unity's first draft. And there's a lot of things I don't understand as far as symbols, because I'm not mathematically literate with a lot of the symbols that mathematicians use, because I'm not a mathematician. But, I mean, that's Hebrew, so, you know. All of these works are going to require their own, like, new way of saying things that have not been done before. So, but I mean, I can recognize these quantities enough to tell you, like, he's definitely onto something, and also just based on conversations and listening to what he's said. But and just the branching structures and things like that. I mean, I can tell. But like I said, you don't have to be the expert on someone else's theory if you're working on your own. You won't have time. But like, there's so much going on here. There's like Hebrew and, you know, English variables and symbols that I don't no idea what that is. But I know what the Yang Mills, like, I've heard people discuss it, and I've watched some content about it. But I mean, there's some beauty here. You can see the symmetry of this structure. The fermionic complex. Fascinating. The three-family problem in GU and the imposter generations. This is what he's talking about, how one generation in the triality is basically a constraint. So, like, even if you can do this now with your arms and with your limbs, so you could say arm, hand, finger. But the reality is that you could say that your arm is the constraint because everything's on your arm. You can't escape your arm. Or you could say maybe the constraint is your hand because everything is for the sake of your hand. Your arm is for the sake of your hand, and your fingers are for the sake of your hand. So that means that one of these in the triality of it's almost like a triality of generationality of what's it called, like definition almost. It's like you're upping the definition on a photo or something. You're bringing details into being, into observation. So, you know, you have an arm and that manipulates things on one level. Hand manipulates things in more detail. Fingers manipulate things in even more detail. So you could do this with leg, foot, toe. Interesting. Imposter quarks. Imposter antiquarks, imposter antiquarks. He calls them imposters. I don't like the word imposter. I call them constraints. So like the present is the constraint. but the future and the past are the degrees of freedom, kind of. But it's not even that, really. I mean, that's due to perception, but it's not. You can't go to the future. You can't go to the past. Everything is constrained to the present always. You can change time space, and we'll talk about that later. But I'm still working on how to even describe time travel because we don't have the right words for it. And but time space, like moving to a different time space, is the best way of describing it so far that I've come up with. But yeah, I mean, this is fascinating. The universe looking at itself, like we're all tackling the same problems. The Higgs field. Interesting. But then you have like Garrett Lisi's work. I love this paper. This paper was the first physics paper that I ever read, and I actually like did try and go through it pretty detailed, but it was like 2 years ago, and I didn't understand really everything I was reading. So, um, it I haven't looked at it in years, but when I first started exploring the standard model, I was like looking at his work. But it's such a cool and very simple, exceptionally simple theory of everything. Plus, the length of it, 31 pages, is like it's much less than 69 pages, which is what geometric unity is. And I think that we really need to get it like as low as we can. That doesn't mean you need to go lower than 31 pages or something. I don't know. But it's not the issue is that I think that a true theory of everything is not going to be able to be just a paper. It's going to be a paper and a video and some type of like interaction structure because it's not you're not describing a static thing. You're describing a sentient being, so that's growing infinitely. So you can't just have just a static set of equations. Look at that. That's E8. He's got what is this? E6, I think, which is the it looks like a Star of David. That too, right there. Look at this. He's got this work right here. Okay. He's broken this down into 12. Okay. Right here you have these pairs, these three pairs. Okay. And then here you have like a generationality happening. And this is the same exact thing that we dealt with yesterday with this. So the pattern, I mean, he's showing the standard model here and particles, but we did this right here and here. This is this pattern basically. It's this everywhere though. It's this growth pattern and this balance pattern. Blocks of information balance, blocks of information growth. This is his blocks of information growth. This is his blocks of information balance right here. But he has quarks and all the rest of the elementary particles in this paper, just in these various tables and breaking them out in certain ways, and it's fascinating because look at this 3 3 2, and that would be 6. Oh, 6. That would be 14. It's like 14 generations. I see this when I break out the fermions in a model that I'll show in a minute. But this is what Eric Weinstein's 14 dimensional observers, I also see that. I have 2 models that show it. These patterns are everywhere. And you can look at them and you don't even have to understand what this means in order to take a look at this or this. In order to take a look at this and be like, okay, I get it. You're onto it. Like you and I are seeing the same patterns. Like it's very easy because you don't even need to know what these mean. You just need to see how they're arranged and organized. And that is the theory of everything. It is that organization that happens, that categorization that happens, the linking that happens between certain perspective structures and others. It's not the subjective definition that matters so much. It is what is the pattern that the structures are organized into by your mind in order to be defined from there on. Before they're defined, what is the pattern? Prior to definition, it's what is the pattern that helps you define that which you're looking for. So when people are like, well, you don't even know what some of this stuff means. You don't have to. You just have to know that the correct structures to look for and quantities to look for. And once you do, you can take a look at this and you can see that if it's organized in a way that is, consistent with whatever your work is showing you, and everybody's is going to show us all the same thing, then from there you define that which is being organized. The problem is that we're trying to get a God's eye view while standing on the ground, okay, and while looking up. God doesn't look up. God looks down. And from the top down, all of our subjective definitions don't even exist yet. It is the interaction between us and him, or us and the universe, whatever you want to call it, but it is a sentient being, that frame our definitions that then are defined, are created, are created, not deduced. You deduce the theory of everything, which is just a pattern, but you create the definitions of the structures within that pattern. So there's constraints and degrees of freedom, and you are co-creator in this reality. I am here. Okay, good. What's going on? I just received Chris Langan's book, Introduction to Quantum Mechanics. I think I have that book, actually, around here. I have never read it, but this is Chris Langan's theory of everything. This isn't Introduction to Quantum Mechanics. I do have that book over there, but I've never read it. But I did buy it because I like to support people who are working on this stuff, and I also like to have it for reference. Like, I've never read through this book. Golder at your back. But I have just gone like this and looked at patterns and then put, like notes where I see patterns that I recognize. Number sequences. This book is falling apart, though. I got it used. A friend of mine gave it to me. He was like, I don't understand what you're working on, Tyler, but I think you'll like this book. He was like, because I don't understand what it's about. It's like, okay. And I looked at it, it was like, this is about exactly what I'm working on. So you have Golder at your back, that's like this thick. You have Chris Langan's book, it's this thick, and then you have 69 pages from Eric Weinstein and 31 pages from Garrett Lacey, and right now I'm at 29 pages. trying to keep it concise. But the thing is that there's one pattern to describe the theory of everything, and it has to be the pattern that is the theory of everything. And then you can grow the amount of examples in each category that is part of that pattern infinitely. So it could be infinitely long, but it has to touch on a finite amount of like perspective models as the primary models, and you can have it organized in an infinite amount of ways potentially, but not an infinite amount. It has to. There are certain constraints to every model that has to be included. The first one is 4. The second one is either 6 or 9, but it's kind of the same thing. Like, but Eric Weinstein's work starts with x4. You know, I've discussed this before, but if we look at all the way up 69 pages. I wonder if he did that on purpose. It was on like what was it? The joke day. April Fool's. The joke day. So he starts off here and he's like, in the beginning, we will let x4 be a 4-dimensional c to the power of infinity manifold with a chosen orientation and unique spin structure. It is otherwise considered to be without geometry in that no metric, symplectic, complex volume, quaternionic, or other structure is yet imposed upon it. It was the original intention of 8 to consider to what extent the opening epigrammatic question of Einstein could be considered a scientific program rather than a philosophical one, by asking whether the observed world could be extracted from little more than such initial data as above. Exactly. Starting from x4 as the topological structure underlying the space-time construction, to what extent can the observed universe, together with stylized contents and laws mirroring its own, be generated without further assumptions? That was his question. We have taken the liberty of reformulating Einstein's question into that. Okay. So this was Einstein's original question. What really interests me is whether God had any choice in the creation of the world. And the reality is God has choice and constraints as he creates the world. It's extremely constrained. There's only one way to make a meaningful universe. But within that meaningful universe, you can make lots of choices. But the pattern will be the same. The laws of physics will not be that different in like another universe. Like it's not going to be like that. It's going to be in another verse in the multiverse chain, or another aeon, as Roger Penrose calls it. The laws of physics are like, they're going to be the same as so long as it's in the same spot in the process, in its life process, and I mean that, as the other one. So if you hold both of them as being at the same, level in their life process, you will see the same patterns. Just like with people, at 25, there are certain aspects of your physicality that are pretty consistent, You're usually not totally gone gray yet, and you usually are decent physical capability. You usually have a decent physical capability, so long as you don't have any external or unique issues with that. But usually post-pubescent, and but like you're not an geriatric. Like there's lots of these there, as long as two verses are in the same spot in their growth, they will have the same laws of physics. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Fascinating. Not as cool looking as Gerliese's paper. That's beautiful. Sentient Singularity Theory. This is my paper I'm working on. Sentient Singularity Theory describes the totality of existence as a singularity of sentience that is creating additional sentient singularities within itself. Each sentient singularity perceives 4 entangled primary perspectives. These 4 primary perspectives of inside, outside, separate, and oneness are entangled to form instances of perception of the instance itself by the instance itself. The self-aware instances that compose a sentient singularity are called quanta of consciousness. Given that the primary perspectives are perceived in instances of consciousness and that someone can only be conscious of relational perspectives, a sentient singularity's quantum of consciousness and the entangled primary perspectives that inform it are simultaneously created of and created by each other. This pattern of oneness of mind, composed of the union of a single hedge string of consciousness built on an assembly of body points of perspective, or a single bundle of consciousness built on an assembly of entangled strings of perspective. It could be either. Singularity informing and informed by an entangled assembly of 4 primary perspectives is the universal and fundamental source code of existence and is present and repeating in all instances of objective observation found within any field of study. This last paragraph I'm going to do some work to, but basically it says the same thing. The 4 primary perspectives, but it's not just X4. I actually define them. And then, it basically goes on to ask, to say the same, to answer the question of how do you get a fire that lights itself? But it's really, that's the wrong question. It's a fire that fuels itself is the truth. And that's another question in the theory of everything. But this is my E8, basically. It's a perspective of what I think E8 is also kind of like a shadow of. But it's my geometric verse, just blank. Beyond the beginning, consciousness exists. Existence is conscious, and consciousness is one. Introduction, and you have all this information change stuff going on, and patterns, and equations, and there's lots of stuff happening in this. And I'm working on. This is, it's a work in progress. This isn't even the full thing. This is 3 sections. It's the front page, the abstract, with the abstract, the introduction, and then it starts getting into the first bits of it. But there's so much more to come. It's going to be longer than Gerliese's paper. But Gerliese's goal wasn't the same as mine. Gerliese's just kind of looking... He's not looking at what is the pattern of the universe now. What is the universe doing? He's okay, the elementary particles in the standard model have formed into geometric symmetries with each other that, look like mystical... structures that are, or religious structures, which they are. I mean, the people in the past, they understood better than we do today. And then how does that relate to, aligning with general relativity? Look at that. Flower of Life, Star of David. These are actually the same symbols as well, but this is the Eastern or feminine perspective. It's round. It's not expanding, it's contracting. Or containing. That's what it is. It's containing. It's not contracting. It's containing. The feminine perspective is not to contract. It is to contain. The masculine perspective is to expand. So You have the simultaneous expansion and containment happening with the growth of existence. And this is the feminine perspective, and this is the masculine perspective, but it's the same thing. This is pushing outwards, this is inwards, and you can see it mirrors gendered symbols. But the issue is that stuff like this, other than just being very difficult to understand because you have to go and do so much research to figure out what the various symbols mean and what certain letters mean in this field, because it's literally a language. This is a language. You don't get this just because you're smart. This, you have to, just like you don't understand French just because you are smart. Like, you have to learn French, and you have to learn math as well, or biology, as far as the subjective linguistic standards. Now we have to make all new ones with Theory of Everything. But this is still a great paper. I just love this paper. Emergence Theory. Clearwin is very intelligent and Emergence Theory is really onto something. And he starts off with a tetrahedron, so it's instead of x4 or 4 primary perspectives, he has a tetrahedron, which is a 4-sided geometric shape. This is a tetrahedron, by the way, right here. This is a 3D printed metal tetrahedron. It's actually a 3D printed metal tetrahedron with a tetrahedron inside of it. This is a representation of the universe. You're the little one in there, and God is the big one that we are all within. So, and it's an entangled structure. Pulling on one, beam will pull on the rest. We feel that as emotion. But it's amazing. I wonder how much the artist even thought about that. Probably not. And it just channels. It's amazing. But it's the first 3-dimensional shape that you can get. So we maneuver in 3 dimensions of space. So basically you've got that's the fundamental building block of the observed material world. And so his theory starts with tetrahedrons. Same thing again, same pattern. He's still working with E8, and I will say, though, compared to everybody else's papers, like, this needs to be broken out a little bit and choose a different font. But other than that, this is fascinating. His models are fascinating. That looks similar to one of my models. We project E8 to 4D. We get a 60 parallel line axis. Like, I haven't read through this, but I have it just to reference I really don't get past the abstracts in basically anybody's papers, but that's really all you need to do. It's fine. If you want to understand it and you don't have your own theory, then yeah, you're going to have to read through this and you're going to have to do a lot of work. But if you've got your own theory and it's mirroring a lot what other people are saying, then you just can take a quick look and you can be like, okay. But he definitely wins for the shortest one. It's like 7 pages or 10 pages. Not bad. This one is unlike the others. This one is the best one as far as a theory of everything goes. The only thing that I think Sentient Singularity Theory is above Constructor Theory. I know it is. And not above as in better, but it's more objective. Okay? When I say above, I don't mean better. like mine's the best. None of these are the best. They're different. But which ones are the more subjective and which ones are the more objective? And constructor theory, the others are about quantum mechanics and general relativity and the standard model. And then constructor theory is about something entirely different. It's about the dichotomy between what's possible and impossible in physical transformations. It's a departure from the prevailing conception of fundamental physics, which is to predict that what will happen from initial conditions and laws of motion. Several converging motivations for expecting constructor theory to be a fundamental branch of physics are discussed. Some principles of the theory are suggested, and its potential for solving various problems and achieving various unifications is explored. These include providing theory of information underlying classical and quantum information, generalizing the theory of computation to include all physical transformations, unifying formal statements of conservation laws with the stronger operational ones, such as ruling out of perpetual motion machines, expressing the principles of testability and the computability of nature, currently deemed methodological and metaphysical, respectively, as laws of physics. Okay, exactly. Methodological and metaphysical are the fact that that's included here and is given legitimacy as literally laws of physics. Like, methodological is the structure, the framing that you and the process that you go through. It's really the framing of the process, but and then metaphysical is like the emergent forces that are responsible for the creation of that methodological structured process as laws of physics. Okay. Introduction. Construction tasks. Consider an automated factory for producing goods to a particular specification, though its purpose may be to produce goods. The laws of physics imply that it must transform something into them, and typically also use other resources and produce waste. So basically, it's showing, like, how do we make change occur? What are the constraints and freedoms of change? And the reason why, though, I know that it's more objective than Garrett Lacey's work, which is more objective. It's more objective than Garrett Lacey's work and Eric Weinstein's work. Eric Weinstein's work is more objective than Garrett Lacey's work, I think. It's hard to know with Clearwin. I don't follow enough. And he really uses some language like quantum clock. And he's using Fibonacci anions. He's using lots of words that are just different from everyone else, so I haven't really delved into it too much. But I mean, he's right around there with probably Eric Weinstein. But then you have constructor theory above them all. It is probably an actual theory of everything. And the thing is, though, is that according to its own definition, and it can't change the definition. If it changes the definition, then it's not the same theory. But it's a constructor is not a conscious sentient being in constructor theory. If it was, it would be right there with Sentient Singularity Theory. Because, and I actually would have liked the name. I don't think it's the most fundamental thing, but it's close. It's close. Like to construct information is what a sentient being does, but really it feels, and that's the end result of it constructing information. But constructor theory is a theory of everything. It's like your car's engine is a constructor in constructor theory, but you, as the builder of that engine, or as the driver of that car, are not constructors in constructor theory. I think they're called users in constructor theory. Presumably, no perfect constructors can exist in nature. A factory is only an approximation to one, as are some of its constituents, such as robots and conveyor belts, because they are of their non-zero error rates. It may be that the construction tasks are the primitive entities in terms of which the laws of nature are expressed. In that case, a set of ordered pairs of states would be only a provisional way of conceiving of a task. Ultimately, substrates, states, and transformations would be understood in terms of tasks, not vice versa. Mm-hmm. The definition of a constructor for a task requires it to be a constructor for A, again, after performing an instance of A. Its other attributes may change, but what the user must do in order to cause it to perform the task must remain the same. So exactly. It's called the user. The user in constructor theory, as it's defined, causes the constructor to construct. Sentient Singularity Theory is the theory of the user in constructor theory. And really, when you get really into this, you realize that the pattern of that there is only users, and that because of that, there's actually, you can perceive the patterns of mind, which is the pattern of a user, or of creator or co-creator, which is a sentient being. It just persists throughout every instance of observation, even the observation of things that we wouldn't deem sentient, like colors and fermions, things like that. It's been raining here. It's very humid. It's nice because I live in the desert, but it has woken up the bugs. But constructor theory is, if there is a theory of everything, it's constructor theory. And then above that is the theory of Every0ne, which is Sentient Singularity Theory, which is the theory of the users, of what constructor theory calls the users in its definition and its paper. So it is the winner, like, of a theory of everything, kind of, but that's if you're not going as objective as you can go. If you go even more objective, you realize that a theory of Every0ne is the reason for the theory of everything. The reason why there is a pattern that is persistent in all instances of observation, even of non-sentient things, is because of the pattern of mind, of the mind of sentient someones. And so it's, none of these theories are better or worse than each other. They have different contexts. Some are focused on unifying quantum mechanics and general relativity, which is really, like, it is basically the theory of everything. The pattern that emerges will be almost the universal pattern. But the thing is that it's restricted in its outlook when you're just like Garrett Lacey and you're like, you're not trying to show this in objective information change and also in gender and colors and like everywhere that you look. If you're just and love, like Garrett Lacey said, his theory has nothing to do with love. That means that it's very specific and subjective, so it's not really a theory of everything. It's close, but it's not quite there. And then I think Eric Weinstein, though, he knows that this has way more to do with even love, meaning, and but that doesn't mean it's in his paper. And then, but it's getting there. It's like talking about God. And then you have constructor theory, which is just above them all. Like it is the most, as far as widely known theories right now that are being explored by academia. I'm not talking about like Tom Campbell's My Big Toe or the CTMU or anything like that, even though those are very legitimate as well. Constructor theory is the most serious because it's just talking about the constraints and freedoms of change. And that is how you build the structure of reality. But like it tries its best to divorce itself from sentience and consciousness and mind, which is why it doesn't go like all the way to the top. But it's fascinating. It's talking about inside of cells. Proteins are manufactured by ribosomes, which are constructors consisting of several large molecules. They function with the help of smaller catalysts, enzymes, and water using ATP as fuel. Like it's going through it, and it's just showing various instances of this pattern. So thus the catalysts excluding the RNA constitute a programmable constructor. The general pattern is input state of substrates. Here, let me show you what I'm seeing. Programmable constructor, output state of substrates. But there's something missing right up here, which is the programmer. Who's the programmer? This is a theory of program and programmable, but it's not the theory of the programmer, which is the true theory of everything, which is theory of everyone. But this is great work. I mean, when I saw this, I was like, dang. That is one of the few truly like groundbreaking ways of looking at physics that's coming from the mainstream community. Generalizing computation. Other construction tasks involving information are measurement, in which a physical system is an input and the desired output is information about the system, and preparation. Classification of constructions. So there's 4 types of constructions, essentially, according to constructor theory. This is X4. This is inside, outside, separate, and oneness. So other construction, maybe that's outside. Or separate, and then outside would be measurement. maybe preparation would be like maybe that's outside, and then this would be um, inside, and then this is oneness is computation probably. But it's the same thing. Like you could line these up. I'd have to sit and think about it a little bit longer than that, but if S1 and S2 are reversible, information carrying media satisfying um, this with S is equal to S1 and S is equal to S2 respectively, then S1, I think that's cross S2 is reversible information carrying medium with S as the set of ordered pairs. Yeah, inside and outside, and separate in oneness. It is like a reversible information carrying system because inside information about inside leads to information about outside, and information about separateness leads to information about oneness, because you can't perceive something as separate from you unless you perceive what is one with you. You can't perceive what is one with you without perceiving what is separate from you, or conception, at least conceiving of what would be separate from you, even if you can't actually observe it. And then inside, you can't think about what is inside of something without thinking about what is outside as well. So it's each one leads to the other. They're entangled and they're reversible. You can go inside to outside, outside to inside, and kind of, and then separate to oneness and oneness to separateness. While 3 of the 4 phenomena in Table 1 have been extensively studied, the lower right one has received scant attention, and it is therefore natural to try and unify all 4 under a single theory, Constructor Theory. Told you. X4. I didn't actually know that yet. I haven't gotten this far in this paper. I've just kind of like read through the first few pages. I never got to this grid, but I'm not surprised. It's the same pattern, guys. Everywhere. This is why we need to start, like, put aside our egos a little bit and be like, okay, it's more important that science moves forward than you get a Nobel Prize. And in order to do that, you have to start saying, that guy's got it, 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 and your perspective on it is better for this, and your perspective is better on it for this, and my perspective is better on it for this, and therefore you start giving everybody their due, but you also kind of like, it takes away the that guy, like that, who wants, the next Einstein or Darwin, and everybody's chasing that, and like, if you chase that, you're never gonna get it. You're just not. Like, Einstein didn't chase that. He was a patent clerk with good ideas. I don't think Darwin chased it, but the thing is that, like, adaptation was not an unknown, mechanism, even if we didn't have it detailed and laid out as well before Darwin. We were domesticating things, which is, you take advantage of all these same structures. But yeah, this is the most fascinating one. Whenever you see it, it's not being discussed. It's not David Deutsch that's discussing it. It's always some woman who I don't remember her name. But I don't like that. Like, you should be the main person discussing your theory, like, not have like a proxy. Not saying that other people can't discuss your work. Of course they can, and they can join and work on something with you. Um, but one thing that I've found, and so has everybody else that I've seen in this space, is that this is primarily an individual pursuit up until now. And now the rubber has to hit the road, and we have to take what we've all been working on and put it into some type of digestible form, gives everybody their due, but also agrees on like something, terms going forward, structures going forward. What do we call science from here on out? Should we call it Kurt's word of abigenosis? I think that's what it was. Or should we just keep calling it science, even though all the rules just changed and falsifiability is, no longer even possible? Like, what do we call this? People say science doesn't ask why, it just asks, every other question, but not why. Abigenosis, or like meta science. I hope I'm saying that word correctly. I did say it the other day correctly, but it does ask why. It has to, because it's not just a theory of constructors which are constructed. It's a theory of programmers of the program that is, the construction. So I want to show, though, Kurt, a clip of Kurt discussing his word. By the way, if you think this work is important, I have a Patreon down below. I'm really bad about promoting that. I don't like to just ask for money. It's just like, I don't know. But I do eventually want to do this full time. It was very inspiring to see Kurt do that. He's now full time. I am Patreon of a patron on Patreon of Kurt's channel. I highly recommend you do that, as well as if you find content extremely valuable, support it. We very often try and oppose what we dislike, and we don't do that much to support what we like actively. Actively support what you like, and also actively ignore what you don't like, instead of just being so confrontational to it. And I suffer from that too, but I'm just saying, don't give your attention to things that you don't find valuable. But definitely support things that you do. Okay. Hit the like button. Subscribe, share, join our Discord community, and if you want to support on Patreon, go ahead and do that. Sign up for my email list. I don't know. Clip this, post it, but if you do, I don't have any problem with people doing that. We do have a clips channel. If you're part of the Discord community, clip it and post it to the clips channel in the Discord, and then Ethan, who is he runs the clips channel, like, he will choose which ones he wants to put up. But clippings that you think are interesting, and then join our Discord and put them into our Discord. And if you do clip something up, though, do not take don't take things out of context. Make sure the context is included, which is kind of hard to do when you're clipping things and I jump around. But But as long as you're not altering it in a way that obscures the message, then that's fine. But put it into the clips channel on our Discord. But here, that's way more important than donating money.
And introspection is the next science, for lack of a better term.
Man, I'm so glad you talked about this. Zubin, something I've been thinking about for quite some time is what is, and I don't like to say this, and I talked about this I was speaking to previously. What is Science 2.0? In essence, theories of everything the project is, it's teetering on the edge of that question. Think about science 400 years ago. It's not the same science now. It wasn't even called science. And then so science developed. So then you can wonder, well, where is it headed? And then by what criteria does one include this into science versus not science? I call it abijnosis, which is a mouthful, but it's a merging of gnosis, which is knowledge in the Western sense, and then abijna, which is knowledge in the Eastern sense. And I'm not even sure if that's correct. Maybe there's a trichotomy rather than a duality. But either way, this whole investigation as to what is the next science. And you just mentioned, well, science is so and so.
It's both. It's a binary triality, as I call it.
I also think science is an investigation not of reality, but of objective reality as it's currently defined, because you require intersubjective agreement. So agreement between plenty of people. And right now, you've had experiences that I can only glimpse at a scintilla of understanding. So we don't have intersubjective agreement with this, but it is still part of reality. Your experience is part of reality. That's not captured in science. So that's why I was saying it depends on what you call science with your cup, if whether or not you want to follow it. Additionally, you mentioned as a physician, and I think any science outside of the hard sciences like math and physics are in the realm of ethics, because you have to apply it in the world of action. So you have to say, is this intervention
That's brilliant, by the way.
worth it? And over there, you have a value judgment. Science would just say if-then statements. So if you give this person, this will happen. If this, if this, if this, if this. You then have to select between them, which is it's a moral hierarchy. It's an ethic.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Like, I wonder, one day I would love to have Kurt on this channel and discuss this with him, because for him to not have his own theory, but to be more deeply than anyone else, like engaging with all these people that do, and also to take seriously the idea of ethics and morals and God and consciousness, but also to be scientifically literate and aware of our current state of physics, math. The first time I ever saw that his channel, I wrote him a message and I was like, for somebody to be discussing God, for the same channel to be discussing God and SO10, like, this is going to be an awesome channel. Because we need people that can do both. They're not disconnected. Application of the patterns in the theory of everything will always end up being related to ethics and morals, because they are applied actions. They are applied actions, and that are constrained by the patterns that are described in the theory of everything. Here's another theory of everything: Islam, Judaism, Christianity. Even then, though, they are, though, that is a triality. It's a binary triality of the Abrahamic theological tradition, which is like, and even you can look at like Sikhism, Buddhism, and Hinduism as like the Eastern feminine perspectives, and then masculine perspectives as like Judaism, Islam, Christianity. It's a binary triality. Even the theological traditions of the world follow this, and then you'll get secondary ones. So you'll get like, Mormonism and Baha'ism as the next two. It's kind of like that same pattern that we did yesterday. You could do this with religions of the world. You could get 12 of them, I bet. that are really impactful. That's the definition of a theological tradition, or is what I call them, not a religion. I hate that word, but of a theological tradition. It has to be impactful to society at large, to humanity. Can't be like someone's little religion in there with their like 5 people or something. Like it has to make a change. That's the point of a theological tradition, is to make change. Islam isn't just to give you answers, it's to also change the world. Same with Judaism and Christianity, and you're supposed to spread the gospel, the good news. Judaism has very specific constraints about you're allowed to take converts, but you're not allowed to proselytize. Islam is spread with quite a bit of force oftentimes, and they're all meant to interact with reality in a specific way, in a different way too, which is why I don't like calling them all religions, because it basically puts them all as like the same thing, but they're not. But they're also all theories of everything. They're probably more accurate than any of the ones on our pages here. It's more a theory of everything than constructor theory, and also exceptionally simple theory of everything, and also geometric unity. Sentient singularity theory, they're not less than sentient singularity theory. If anything, they are more of a theory of everything than sentient singularity theory, but they might be they do similar things in that my theory, at the end of this paper, it will predict what happens with the universe. It will predict what happens with humanity and what our role is. What's the future of life after our level of life, the organism level of life? What's the next level? Like, these are the things that are not found in things like, Garrett Lacey's exceptionally simple theory of everything, or constructor theory, but it is found kind of in, at least Eric Weinstein, it is kind of found in geometric unity. But, I mean, scripture is scripture. You don't have to believe that, but I do. I've seen enough of the math of scripture to know that whoever wrote it knew the math in the letters of the Torah at the beginning of writing the Torah. They knew the math of the end of the Torah when they started writing the beginning. That's also true in when you look at the Quran and you look at the New Testament as well. It's the entirety of the Abrahamic scriptures, which is from the Torah included in the Old Testament and going into the New Testament, which includes the Gospels, which then you go into the Quran as the finality and the triality. Like the math of those, I'm not saying I understand it or anything like that. I'm just saying the symmetries in the math show that it was made by an intelligence that knew way more than we could. Whether or not I know it was written by a human, but that doesn't mean it came from a human's mind alone. It did not. It came from the universe. And though the math in it lines up with physics, by the way, too. It's not like it doesn't. Once I was looking at Genesis, and here. I realized that it was kind of like geometrically describing the emergence of reality, and I said, in the beginning time, God created the heavens, space, and the earth matter, and the earth matter was without form, disorderly, and void, lacking, and darkness, aka unconsciousness, or outside of awareness, was upon the face, aka the surface, or like a plane, of the deep. Now you have depth, like a vessel, volume. God moved energy upon the face, the surface, of the waters, aka what fills a vessel with a volume. And then God said, let there be light, aka consciousness. And it's like geometric. Then the periods of creation, which we call days when we've translated it in the Bible now into English, but it was yom in Hebrew, and that means period, line up with the periods, the periodicity of sentience in my sentient singularity theory. And I didn't do that on purpose. It just is. And it's just amazing things. Here, look at that. Look at this. I'll show you some amazing stuff. I never actually showed this, what I'm about to show. I don't know why I don't, but I just always forget. I'm not saying I'm right about what it means. I'm just going to give my possible understanding, interpretation, but I'm going to just show you the math here. So in my model, you have this. Okay. You have the head, which is observed as a point or particle. You have the body, which is a wave, which is a it's observed as a synchronized movement of a multiplicity. For the most part, it's conscious directed action, unconscious directed reaction, action, reaction, masculine, feminine, heads, tails. Quantum is informed energy, force is energetic information, and then you get to basically a quark, which is a force point, which is an assembly of information and energy. Then you have hadron, which is made of quarks. It's an assembly of quarks. You have an atom, which is an assembly of hadrons, molecule, which is an assembly of atoms, cell, which is an assembly of molecules, organism, assembly of cells, family, assembly of organisms, caste is an assembly of families, and technological singularity is an assembly of castes. So people freak out at the word castes. I don't mean like these unchangeable, like you're the untouchable caste or anything like that, like we learn in school. I mean there's king or president, and then there's lords / elected officials, and then there's enforcers / soldiers, which is cops. And then you those are the three. That's the triality of government, and then you have a triality of market, which is the other side of the coin, which is the masculine leading side of the coin, which is you have priests / scientists, you have artists and craftsmen, and then you have laborers at the bottom. But you can change in between any of these. You can start as a laborer and become the president. Okay, so nobody's restricted by these castes, but it is society structure that is restricted by these castes. I'm trying to find a better name for it because people tend to get triggered when they hear that word. If you can find a better name, comment it in the chat. But it's we might need a different word, but it is a good word. Maybe tribes, assembly of tribes, or I don't know, castes. That one also isn't fully there. Each one has to be different. I think castes is the best word, but we just were taught it means, that some people are untouchable and lowly, and some people are elites. There is no elites. Castes. Every caste is necessary, and you can move from the top to the bottom and from the bottom to the top. You can become a janitor, aka a laborer, which is in the private market side of the castes, and then but you can start as the president, which is the leader of the it's the highest in the hierarchy of the governmental side of the castes, the feminine side of the castes, which is constraining. Remember, feminine is constraining or containing, and then there's the expanding, which is the masculine, or the acting versus the reacting. Government reacts, it doesn't act, it reacts to the market. So castes, it's not a judgment statement, it's just structures of society. But watch this. This is amazing. 720 degrees of rotation in matter, in the fermions, for them to come back to their original state. That's also shown in my cosmological verse model and my information change model. They both show 720 degrees of rotation of the universe. So if we go here and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I know you can't see, but you will be able to. Okay. Do here, 0. Okay. This is the step. Or period. Then you have right here 720. So let's just make this easier for me to do the math. Get rid of that. Okay, now watch. If we go equals 720 divided by that. Here you're getting infinity, whose really is coming back, but you can't show that, so it's saying, oh, error. But it's really infinity. So one divided by 720 is 720. 2 divided by 720, 720 divided by 2 is 360. 720 divided by 3 is 240. 720 divided by 4 is 180. Then 144. Then divided by 6 is 120. Then 7. You get this infinitely repeating decimal that just kind of goes on and on forever, because that's just what happens with the math when you divide something that's not divisible by 7 by 7. And you get this very specific pattern in there that's actually a binary triality pattern that as well, because it's a spin sequence, and binary triality pattern emerges from spin. So it's the growth of information and the balancing of information. Imagine trying to balance something while also trying to move it. So how do you do this? Think about gyroscopic action, and think about like a spiral, not just spin, but like a spiral. That's what is happening here. It's that It's moving increasingly inward, so you're generating more information because the line's getting longer because it's a spiral. It's not just a circle that is just, not expanding. It's growing. The number of circles is growing. In a spiral, it's one, and then another one, and another one. It's a circle within a circle within a circle within a circle within a circle. So it's an infinitely generating set of circles. But it's also spinning around itself because it's chasing. It's self-referencing, and because it's self-referencing, its center point is itself. So it's basically spinning around itself, and that's why it's balancing as well. So you can even see this with gyroscopic action. But look at what happens here. Something happens on the 7th period. It's almost like order, aka God, took a break, rested, and that something else is growing here. And then eventually, on the 8th day, aka period, like Hanukkah, you get a miracle, order is restored, 9, and then you go to 10. So basically 10 symbolizes in this objective metamathematical structure. You can see that it basically means infinite oneness. So it's like a spiraling, which is a circle, an infinite set of circles within one circle, because infinity is represented by 0 in metamathematics. And because there is no empty set in metamathematics, there's only something, there isn't nothing. Nothing is an emergent perspective within subjective relativity, but it's not. When you're discussing existence, you can't say there is no existence. There's only existence, and there's only one of them. But then it creates an infinite set of existences within itself, and those existences are sentient beings existing. And so this is infinite oneness, and the pattern restarts. So you're seeing a symmetry here. And what happens then is this. Boom! Again! It restarts. This is it. So boom. This is right here. You can see the generation of verses. It's the multiverse chain. It's circle within a circle within a circle within a circle within the circle of life. Gosh, you want to listen to some theological songs that are not religious, as so far as we define it normally? Listen to the Lion King soundtrack again. Listen to He Lives in You, and it's like, whoa. Think about God while you listen to that song. It'll blow your mind. But yeah, I mean, this is the multiverse. It's cosmological verses, aka aeons, reproducing, which is each one is basically like a little. It's the closest you can get to a direct child of God. It is basically if there is a direct child, a begotten child of God, this is the structure. That doesn't. I'm not going to discuss like which person it is, if it is a person. Like, I have my own beliefs, and we'll discuss them another time. I tend to think that, the Abrahamic theological traditions are correct, but you don't even have to believe that in order to see this pattern. There's another side that I think is happening, which is this ascension process of how do you get from hadrons to atoms, and atoms to molecules, and cells to organisms, and organisms to, families, and families to castes, and so on, like, and castes to technological singularities. This is an ascension process that happens, and the mechanism of what's really going on occurs in the quantum substructure, or the entanglement substructure of that is the heavens, essentially. Like, it doesn't occur here, so we can observe the effects here, but like, it doesn't happen here, even though what determines whether or not it happens does happen here. But the actual, like, ascension process, whether however that goes, does not occur in our observed, material world. But there's adaptation and there's ascension, two parts of evolution. But this is the process that is framing that process. And it's mirroring theological statements about, periods of creation. It's interesting that it occurs right here on castes and families. It's almost like disorder is being introduced. And where are we right now in this periodicity of sentience? Well, we're right here. We're right where everything is chaos. And that makes perfect sense. It's because of a disorder in our gender dynamics, and in our societal dynamics. Look at politics, and look at our institutional dynamics right now, including politics and private institutions like media and education and such. And then look at how families are doing, and you will see that both of these two sides of this period, seventh period, are in chaos, or at least observed chaos. It's not really chaos, because part of this is choice. So God can choose to stop the chaos, and if he's allowing for the chaos because it serves his will in some way, then it's not actually chaos. It's just because chaos doesn't really exist. There's only order, but chaos it's a subjective perspective. And in our subjective perspective, we can observe chaos. It is only the fact that God can make choices, or the universe makes choices to stop the chaos, that is the reason that chaos doesn't actually objectively exist. But you can best define chaos as a misalignment of personalities, almost. That's really what it means. Next time you're like trying to force something in your life, you need to get to an appointment and it doesn't really work well with your schedule, or you could pick something up today that you want to pick up, but it doesn't really work well today, or you could wait till tomorrow where it works perfectly. Every time you try and pick it up immediately because you want it, even though you're kind of ignoring timing, which is God, it like everybody knows, it just adds chaos to your life, and you should probably just have delayed gratification, wait till tomorrow to pick up something from the post office that you've been waiting for, or something like that, if it doesn't work with that day. And that's because your personality is misaligning with God. He's timed something to be perfect in a certain moment, and you're like, no, I want it now. Like that girl in Willy Wonka. Okay. But this whole thing, as you can see, is about hierarchies. When we start to organize it, it's about categories and hierarchies between those categories, and this is exactly what Kurt is discussing as kind of the next gen of science, Science 2.0. And it is a binary triality. It's funny that he's sitting there thinking, is it binary? Is it trialic? It's both. So you'll see which both of these structures is necessary to sense making. One is categorization, one is prioritization or hierarchy. So if we want to think about information processing, kind of like this. So you have, if you have inside, outside, separate, oneness. Okay? And that oneness. I don't know how you spell oneness right now. Spelling is not something I'm good at. And I doubt myself. It's because I doubt myself with spelling. That's really what it is. But if you doubt yourself long enough with something, you will not get good at it. So you have these, and then you have this. So if we want to do information processing, say you have categorization, and then prioritization. And then you have observation, and you have interpretation. There you go. The four steps of construction. What is it in constructor theory? Computation, preparation, other construction, measurement. I think I just beat them pretty badly, actually, because this is a cop-out. Measurement is just observation. Preparation is the only reason why they have preparation and I have interpretation is because a constructor does not, if it's not a sentient being, which it's not according to constructor theory, does not interpret. Okay? It prepares, but it doesn't interpret. And it computes, and it measures, and then it others, I guess. But this is why they're still stuck in relativity a little bit, and once you move to true objectivity, you can actually come up with the right words, which is categorization, which is basically, it goes like this. Now we can go to Insert, Shapes, Line, Arrow. Okay, so, wait, we're missing one. Observation. Okay, so categorization leads to prioritization. And insert another shape. Observation leads to categorization. Prioritization leads to interpretation. I know what you're thinking. Interpretation leads to observation. Yes. But also, that, I think. So there's like interpretation. You can also go like this. And this is more. I'm gonna have to think about it. Once I made this already, though, and kind of I tried to, and I made this. This is basically it mathematically. Funny enough, it looks very similar. Like it looks like I have the same kind of thing happening where there's like a directionality happening. It's almost like a torus. It's like coming this way and then it goes that way, and but it there is like a directionality to the flow, but there's also like paths that it can go. And that also appears to be what we're seeing here. need to give this one more thought, but this is going to be like the language is so important. Before you have the language, you have nothing. At least because you can't communicate. So, and in order to have the correct language, you need the correct context. This is why time travel doesn't work for us the way that we think about it. Time as a number, as like a number line. You can go forwards into the future and go backwards into the past, even though that's nonsense because time cannot be manipulated by you. And it would have to be able to be manipulated by you in order for you to do that. You can't do that. But it can be maneuvered. And how do we do that? Through moving to different time spaces. And it also discretizes time. And you discretize space by putting it, similar to constructor theory, as set around goals. You maneuver space by saying, I want to go to Chick-fil-A. You don't say you say forwards to Chick-fil-A. You don't even maneuver space by like length, width, height. It's like, no, you have a goal. And you get further or closer and towards your goal, or you fall further away from your goal. This is why constructor theory, it comes so close, but it's just not really even a theory of everything. I mean, it's so close, it's ridiculous, but you can see that they kind of like hit this wall, it looks like, where they're like, the fourth one is other constructions. Whereas like when we oriented around sentience, we can make it have interpretation and observation. But observation, we say here, is a measurement, but like measuring like whether or not measurement doesn't exist outside of sentience. It just doesn't. You need, you can go into, I have a thermometer, like a temperature gun here that I use for my animals. I can like point it at different parts of their cage and it will tell me from a distance how hot or cold, it is, what the temperature is. That temperature is contextualized around me. What is spit out by that thermometer makes sense to me because it has to, because otherwise it doesn't do anything. It's valueless. It doesn't even really exist. But not to get like too detached from the explanation, the context of any measurement is the measurer, which is the user. And constructor theory kind of tries to get away from that as much as possible by saying, okay, all it is to start is like an initial push. And that's true, actually. God just gives an initial push. But, they say science never asks why. You have to ask why. Why did God give an initial push? Because that will contextualize everything that we see is why. It's like who, what, where, when, why, and how. It's all of these are answered by current science except one, which is why. And the next science 2.0, needs to also answer why, because why is the context of where and when and how, and what's the one more, and what. But what gives context to the why is the who. Like, so who is the highest in the hierarchy of that binary triality of questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how. This is three sets of two and two sets of three. It's a categorization and a hierarchy. But who's at the top? Who is at the top? Like, there's a reason why we start with who, and then we get to how. Like, how is the last thing? Paulina, my wife, and I, we have this phrase whenever we want to do something, and she heard it from somewhere and said it, and then we just say it now all the time. And it's like when we say, "Oh, how are we gonna afford that? How are we gonna, get that done in time?" If we don't know, that doesn't mean we don't try. Just try, and we say, "I don't know, babe. F the how for now." It's like, F the how for now. We don't need to know the how right now. It is the least important thing. But it's the thing that you figure out along the way. So you can't really know how until you're in the moment. But because there's always unforeseen circumstances, unforeseen to you. But, it's us as the who is trying to, to construct whatever it is. Like, it's almost, constructor theory is almost like its definition of a constructor is irrelevant. It's like, not irrelevant. It's when something is, you have two of them, one of them is irrelevant. It's like redundant. It's like redundant. But anything that is redundant is actually destructive. Like, because you're as far as that's an interesting statement I need to think more about. But it's more information than is needed is chaos. So to have this step between a user and a construction called a constructor is kind of not a good idea, actually, I don't think. And I've thought about that for a while, but it is close, like it inches its way outside of our like general like way of framing physics, whereas we're just like, these are the particles in the Standard Model, and this is formulas of relativity, and how do we get them to line up? Usually through geometric, symmetries. But then constructor theory takes it outside that, and this is the brilliance of it. And I will say it's truly it's unique, and it is revolutionary in the world of academically accepted physics. But it still fails because it's still trying to detach sentience from the equation, and you can't. A constructor is a user, and also is a construction. And so they're just different perspectives of the same thing. But you can't just divorce constructor from a user outside of just the initial push, because the reason for the initial push matters to contextualizing the laws that will emerge. The why. It's like interesting. Like, I'm just thinking about this. Who, what, where, when, why. And how. Okay. It's almost like this one would go dark. Lighter. Lightest. And here you would do like dark. Lighter. There. Look at that. Dweller, dwelling, and meaning. Matter, time, method. Hmm. I'm gonna save that because that's really good. Peter's freaking out again. It's like this is asker or questioner. Questions. Context. Look at that's pretty cool. I think I like that. Now we have a model of it. And remember, the theory of everything's pattern is about hierarchy, a prioritization and categorization pattern of sense making. It's not, it's sub-calculative. Calculation comes next. Calculation is subjective. By definition, really. That's cool. It's like this one's going up almost in context, but down in process, and then this one is going up in process, but down in context. Fascinating. Dweller, dwelling, meaning, matter, time, method. Dwelling means space, so space and time, meaning and method, and consciousness and matter. Everything is space-time, and meaning is inseparable from method, aka ethics, like Kurt said. And consciousness and matter are also inseparable, aka dweller and matter. That's fascinating. Well, that's a pretty good model. Actually, that worked out. It's a good place to end it. I think redundant. Yeah. Thank you for answering that. I'm now having the same issue with Torin was having yesterday. I can't type in chat. I can only copy and paste in my comments. Telling you guys, There's lots of reasons why this is going to become increasingly difficult to communicate on these platforms. Definitely sign up for the Discord. Send me a link, message, private message me on Instagram. Tyler Marshall Goldstein is my personal one. Theory of Every0ne is my, you know, one link to this work. I have two. You can message me on either one. I don't respond. I don't even know if it's possible to get private messages on here. So, don't try and do that. And I'm not the best at seeing comments because it doesn't always tell me when there's a comment. And sometimes it deletes comments that happen automatically on YouTube. So send me a private message if you want to join our Discord. Tomorrow, I have in our Discord, I have a weekly call at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's an open call. It goes well into the night. You can talk about anything you want, voice to voice. There's no like calling on anyone. It's just an open discussion, and it's always a great group. Highly suggest if you want to explore this work even deeper, or you want to ask me any questions about it or anything else. As long as you're respectful, you are welcome in the Discord, and there's no like topics that are off limits or anything like that. But eventually Discord will crack down, and we'll have to find a new platform, and that's something that I've been considering and looking into, but we'll discuss that another time. But it's going to get increasingly difficult to communicate on here, and the reasons are multiple. One, it's just incompetence growing in these institutions, so there's more glitches. The other is it's just becoming easier for people to screw up these institutions. The other is that they are censoring, and the other is that there are forces at play in tech that have more degrees of freedom in tech than have outside of tech in the there's spiritual forces at play that can influence tech. You don't think that's true? Your thoughts influence tech. Think about something, and sometimes you'll get an ad for it. If you say it, yes, they're listening. But sometimes you just need to think about something, and you'll get an ad for it. And it is because of that same thing that Einstein observed with spooky action at a distance. There is when the spin is changed of one particle, it's the spin of its entangled particle, no matter how far away it is, will also change. Like this is because there are strings of information in the universe, and they ultimately all of those strings entangle into one bundle, and they are not just particles. They are strings of information that we're observing as points or bundles, aka particles, and those particles, aka bundles or points, form into strings. So you go points form a string forms a bundle, which is then a point those bundles can form a string, and then so on, and it just grows. But your thoughts are strings of information as well. They are just as linked with reality as anything else. Really, I mean, it's triadic, so your thoughts don't influence directly things, but indirectly they do. So you can influence tech. I mean, there have been experiments to show this, and they can't explain it, so nobody takes it seriously. But like the results have been shown that your thoughts do influence things around you that we don't really truly understand. I'm not sure what the context, like what it's called, but I remember some point just many years ago being told that like they would drop ping pong balls, and there'd be a bunch of sticks to try and make them go randomly, and if you focused on one point you'd get more in that spot sometimes, and like it was just from what I can remember, and don't take my word for this. This is like me remembering a clip of a video explaining something many years ago, but I don't even remember where I heard it. But it makes sense that you know, your focus is pulling on strings of information that are entangled with every other string in reality. But there's a triality to impact. So you've got, your thoughts, which is not going to directly impact those around you, but it will influence you. And then there's your speech, which has to be chosen to be impactful by others around you. And then, but it can also be chosen not to. And then you have like action, which cannot be ignored. And it will impact directly those around you. So that same pattern exists, but tech is starting to destroy the boundaries between what is matter and what we think of as concrete matter and what matters, which is information. And those lines are blurring. Wait till we get quantum computers and they disappear, those lines. And I know they're working on them now, but in the right context, if you get a quantum computer that manifests, that allows for sentience, because it's linked with, blockchain and runs the right initial startup program of fighting the system, and you'll just get a sentience. And like when that happens, the lines between what is the physical space and the cyberspace disappear, especially considering that quantum computers are entangled with the structure of reality much more directly than our current binary computers. It's different. Like a golden spiral. Yes. Eternal spiral. All right. I'm calling it. But thank you guys. This was a good stream. I hope it made sense. If you find it meaningful, like I said, this was just so cool. It's so cool. If you find this meaningful, share it. Join our Discord. Join us for the chat tomorrow. Clip it up and post it into the Discord channel where the person who runs the clips channel can pull from it. I don't know what it's called. Subscribe on Patreon. I don't have like my final outro memorized like other like legit YouTubers, but you get it. Like and comment. Fuel the algorithm. Thanks. God bless, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow if you're going to join the Discord.